Hi Eva, really delighted that you could join us today to discuss one of our topics as part of the HELP programme. My name is Gina Noonan. I'm here with the Teaching and Learning Centre. Eva, do you want to introduce yourself before we get going?
Sure, yes. My name is Eva Burke. I am an academic writing tutor.
Brilliant. So as you know, we're here to chat today about academic writing and all that goes with it, and hopefully it'll be something that will help our students as well to kind of support them. So we might start with our questions.
Yeah,
so hopefully
good.
that we'll pick a question maybe and we'll throw it out there and see what happens. So question one, it's what's the first thing students should do when given a brief for an essay or another written assignment? So what would you advise on that one, Eva?
I get this question a lot actually working with students. Where to start? What's the very first step? And my first sort of tip would be to really look at the assignment title or essay question, get a highlighter or a pen and try to pull out like instructional verbs, and really try to identify what it is you're being asked to do, because I think where sometimes students can go wrong at the very beginning is they can go off in completely the wrong direction with their assignment and do something that they're not actually being asked to do. I think understanding what you're being asked to do at the very outset is really, really important. So yeah, I would sit down with the question, break it down. Are you being asked to compare? Are you being asked to analyze, examine? You know, because those are slightly different things that you're being asked to do, and that will obviously affect the approach that you take. That would be my tip for the very first thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And what would you advise then if, for example, compare comes up or critically analyze and they're wondering what that means? Like, should they kind of go and look it up, or?
Yeah, so if you're being asked to critically analyze something, I would say what your lecturer is probably looking for there is a sense of your ability to engage with the literature around a problem or a topic. So let's just take, for example, we'll say you're doing social studies or social care, and you're being asked to write an essay on developmental psychologists, comparing two different developmental psychologists, or critically analysing one of their theories. We'll say you're being asked to critically analyse Piaget or something. I would say what you're being asked to do there is demonstrate that you understand the theory first and foremost. But rather than just describing it or telling your lecturer, this is who Piaget is, this is what his work does, you go to the next level. So you use your informed opinion from all the reading that you've done, hopefully, or will do through the research, to say, this is why the theory is relevant. This is why it's important for contemporary practice. These are some ways in which maybe it's outdated. These are some limitations of the theory.
So you kind of give your position on it, really,
exactly.
is it? Yeah, okay, brilliant.
To take a stance and make an argument, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's been really helpful, even. So you say really spend a bit of time teasing out those things at the beginning. I love the highlighter idea, just marking it out and so they stand out. So that's
just
really
saves you a lot of time later on, especially if you because sometimes students will see a name and they'll jump off on that and go writing, and you know, you don't want to waste your time.
Absolutely. Super. So maybe we'll share another question and see how we get on, see what's under the deck. So this one, question 2. So we recently asked SETU students what tip they would give to other students about academic writing. So the majority of students advise planning ahead. So there you go, not procrastinating and not leaving it until the last minute. What advice do you have about how students can plan their written assignments? So yeah, that's a good one, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think some really good advice in there. Planning ahead is always important. Procrastination is something I think we're all prone to at times. So it's very, very useful to get a grip on that if you can at the beginning. When I started my sort of academic writing career as an undergraduate, I was told that my writing was like somebody trying to build a house from the roof down, and it wasn't a compliment.
Oh, right.
Because I wasn't doing enough planning. I wasn't doing enough foundational research before I started. I was just starting the writing.
Okay.
So I would say that's a nice metaphor to imagine the opposite of that. Imagine you're building the foundation before you start anything else. So what that looks really like is, obviously going to the library, going online, finding a body of sources, a good kind of number of sources, making sure that you've done some research before you begin. I would also say it's good to have an essay plan. So if your word count is, let's say, 2,000 words, try to break that down before you begin and say, okay, my introduction is going to be 10% of that. So that's going to be 200 words.
Very good.
The body is going to be this many words. How many
more
points
manageable,
can you make?
Isn't it?
Well, that's it. It makes it more manageable. It also helps you to set daily word goals. So you can say, I'm going to write my introduction today, and that's going to be 200 words. And that's very, very doable. And it also helps you to keep a hold of the project or the essay, because I find if you don't keep your word count in mind, sometimes you can end up spending a load of time and space on one particular point, and then the rest of the essay, you end up rushing the conclusion or forgetting to add a proper conclusion.
I think that's a really good point, because like you, I think that sense of you nearly become tired of it, don't you? And then you just think, oh, this has to be in, and you just pull something together, and you haven't really thought through the conclusion as well. So
exactly. And you want every bit of the essay to be doing work. You want every bit of the essay to be adding to the argument, adding to the the analysis or whatever. So I would always say try to break down the word count and plan accordingly.
That's really good. I love your metaphor of building a house. I know for me, it was slightly kind of a different kind of experience in that I was spending too long trying to work out the sentence in my head, and I never put pen to paper. So I was advised, just put a sentence down, like you, I suppose, the foundations, put something down and work on it then, because rather than trying to come up with the perfect sentence, which probably doesn't exist.
I think that's very common, though. I think when you're starting any kind of writing, whether it's a Word document or a blank page in front of you, the white space can be very intimidating.
It really can.
It's hard to mark it and start and know where to begin. I have found free writing helps sometimes with that. So, just sitting 5-10 minutes, just writing everything you know about the subject, and it doesn't have to be formatted or even spelled correctly.
Exactly.
Nobody's going to see it, you know.
It's personal to you. I think that's a lovely idea, and it gets you used to holding a pen, doesn't it? Just to practice.
And and sort of it breaks the seal. It helps you to break ground on the essay. You've got something to go off. You've got
something down. I think that's a really good idea. Okay, super. So hopefully we've given a bit of kind of advice and a few suggestions there. So we might take a stab at question 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so question 3. It's hard to know what's behind question 3. So here we go. Can you explain some of the most common terms students will come across in an assignment brief? So position paper, lit review, varieties of academic writing. So the kind of common terms, I think, you know, you've already discussed, kind of critically analysed, but are there any other things that come across?
Definitely. So a lit review is one that I find sometimes students won't come across this until slightly later in their degree. So they might not have done it in first and second year, but when they come to third year, they might be asked to do a lit review as part of a thesis or a larger project. The purpose of a literature review is really to, first and foremost, give your supervisor or your lecturer a sense that you have information literacy. You're able to go away, gather information, analyze it, and bring it back. But also to give us as readers a kind of survey of the work that's already been done. So when we talk about that foundation for your essay, I suppose think about your thesis as a house that's standing on a foundation of other people's work. So what's in there? Other people that have written about your topic before, that have made contributions to this body of knowledge. When did they do their work? How relevant is it? How are you building on it? How are you sort of interacting with that? That's really what a lit review is asking you to do, to sort of position yourself in relation to the previous research, to say, this is what I'm doing. this is where I'm standing in relation to other people's work, if that makes sense.
That's really good. And I know you yourself were kind of looking at the whole idea of weaving before, about bringing other people's work together. So it's not like, you know, Gina's house here, Eva's house here. It's kind of nearly a housing estate of people together, isn't it?
Yes, that's a really good metaphor, I think. So rather than thinking of your research as distinct or as something separate, to think of it as part of this tapestry, I suppose, that's that other people have added to. Now you're adding your piece to it. And ideally in future, somebody else will go on and build on your work and take what you've done and sort of integrate that into their work. That's what I would say a lit review is. In terms of varieties of academic writing, there are quite a few different sort of genres of writing. We've talked a bit there about taking a position and taking a critical analysis. One piece of writing, or one type of writing that I get asked quite a lot about, is reflective writing. Which is something that I know at Carlos, as students are asked to do quite a lot in certain disciplines. And it can be a bit daunting, because reflective writing, unlike other types of academic writing, is less objective and more personal. So if you're studying social care or early years education, in particular, something like that, you'll often be asked to keep a reflective journal or a diary where you write about your feelings in relation to an experience, your thoughts, what you're personally learning from an experience. It's still academic writing, obviously. It still has some of the conventions of academic writing.
But it's the isn't it, really? It's kind of really owning it as your kind of personal experience.
So you can say, I thought this, I felt this, this is what I learned, this is what I experienced. And that can be really, really useful, because it helps you to look back at past experiences, whether they're workplace experiences, placement experiences, teaching or class experiences, and say, this is what happened, this is what I've learned from it, and this is what I'm going to do moving forward based on what I've learned.
So it's really reflexive as well. They're kind of thinking about the kind of future kind of impact and change. And do you think it's hard even like to get from that stage where you just describe what happened to really analysing what happened? Do you know, like...
I think sometimes when we're writing reflectively or telling somebody else about an experience, we can get very bogged down in the descriptive and say
detail,
where, when, who, whatever. But I would say the next level would be the why. So why is this important? Why are we thinking about this? What is the relevance or significance of this? There are some good videos online, actually, from different university pages on reflective writing. They sometimes envision it as a 3-step process. So looking back, analysing, and moving forward. And there are some good models as well. There's the Gibbs model of reflective writing. There is one called the 5R model, I think, as well. And those are quite helpful for helping
I know that the Borton's 3Q question one is really good. You know, the kind of what happened, so what, so it's and what, so what, and now what. So
actually,
it's kind
of that one.
It's just easy to remember.
It's easy to remember. It's very concise, but it works, because
it works.
It's asking you exactly what it's asking you to sort of strip it back and ask exactly what happened, why it's relevant.
And it mirrors those kind of phases, doesn't it? So it's asking you, like, you know, what happened, the detail, and then, like, you know, so what, as you said, the why is it relevant, and then the now what is really leaning towards the future. So I think that's so if we captured all that, and maybe it's someone's writing, that they write in on the side, you know, that this is the what or the so what and the now what, so they kind of identify the kind of movement between the areas. Maybe
I think that's a really good idea. I'm a really big advocate of annotating everything you write. So obviously not library books, but anything that you can write in the margins, you know, mark it up as much as you can. Use that as a scaffold if you can, because it will help you visualize and say, okay, my essay is in good shape. I have these sections here. It's, you know, everything is where it should be. That can be really, really helpful.
God, we're really constructing, aren't we, with our scaffolding and our houses and our roofs and everything.
A lot of property.
Okay, so we'll take maybe another question. So I'll share again to see what's behind question 4. We're going in order here, so it might make it simple for anyone watching back. So what advice would you give students about how to structure an academic essay or research paper? So this is all about structuring. Okay, so back to our structure again.
There's a few different ways this has been envisioned. The way I prefer to envision the shape of an essay or the structure of an essay or paper is a kind of hourglass shape.
Okay.
So if you think about your introduction as starting at the broadest point, so we'll take, again, we'll take our example of developmental psychology, or looking at a developmental psychologist theory. You'll start broad by telling us who the person is, what their theory is, how it relates to the field in general, and then as you get to the bottom of the introduction, the sort of in the sweep of the hourglass, you'll get to your thesis statement. So,
okay,
what's your point? What's your position here in relation to Piaget? Are you going to tell us actually these theories are quite outdated? Are you going to tell us that they have relevance in the contemporary setting? Are you going to tell us maybe in an Irish context, these particular parts are quite relevant and interesting? So think of your introduction as that kind of inverted triangle shape.
Okay, brilliant.
Start broad, give us lots and lots of context and detail, and then bring us to your thesis statement. So we know where we stand and we know where you stand.
Yeah.
And then I would say for the rest of the body of the essay, I would try to stay narrow and focused and say, this is what the first section of my essay is going to discuss. This is what the second section of my essay is going to discuss. Again, obviously keeping the word count in mind. And then for the end or the sort of conclusion, I would broaden it out again.
Okay,
remind us what your thesis statement was. This is my position. This is what I intended to argue. And then finish by reminding us of the broader relevance of what you've done here. So this is the position you've taken. This is what it means in the larger context of developmental psychology, of Irish education, Irish early years, whatever it might be.
Whatever the context is.
Yeah, that can be a useful way of imagining the sort of shape of an essay.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really like a funnel in and then a funnel back out, isn't it? Yeah, it's really nice.
And again, that can help you to stay on track if you keep that beside you, the image of that beside you. It can help you to stay on track.
Draw it into the margin.
Well, exactly. Annotate everything. And it will help you to make sure that every bit of information is in the correct order, because there is a certain flow to an essay. You know, think about what your reader needs to know. I would say as well, obviously students, your lecturers will have a good sense of the topic and will understand the topic, but write to a sort of a casual audience in so much as you can. Like, imagine that they need to know certain pieces of information to make sense of what you're saying. Don't assume too much knowledge. Just because they do know, but they want to know that you know, if that makes sense.
No, that's really good advice. I think one thing as well that helped me when I was kind of writing pieces before was to always keep the title of my essay on the top of every page, so that I keep looking back up and making sure that everything I was writing connected. So I think that goes back to your idea of just keeping it kind of relevant, rather than going off on a tangent and writing about something that isn't relevant. You know?
And it can be so easy to do that, especially if you've done a ton of research and you want to bring it all in and you want to make that, you want to make the most of the time you spent doing that. But if it's not relevant, if it's extraneous detail, it's not adding anything to the argument or the essay. I would
just
take
becomes
it out.
Padding, doesn't it? Then at that stage,
and you as the reader can sort of tell. You can kind of sense when that's happening. When they're drifting away from the main point.
I remember some advice that I got before as well was to read every sentence and decide, does it deserve to be there? Like, what's it adding that it deserves to be there or not? You know, so you're kind of being very discerning about, you know, the word. You're not trying to reach a word count. You're trying to just say every word should earn its place, you know.
Exactly. Everything should be doing some heavy lifting in there. It shouldn't be trying to sort of wrap up your main point in padding, like you said. It should be very lean and concise, and well, I suppose is the word.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Okay, so we'll take, I think, our last question. So question 5, and we'll see what's behind question 5. So how can students ensure that they are building strong arguments in their academic writing? Okay, so I think that comes back to a lot of feedback to students say you need to build a strong argument. So what would you advise on that one, Eva?
It's a good question. So I'm reminded of a quote from, I think her name is Anne Blair from Harvard University, and she talks about a thesis on a paper and how it can't just be statements of information. It has to have a perspective, a position, an argument. There has to be, you have to be making the case for something, and that's, I think, always good to keep at the forefront of your mind when you're working on anything. So if you're sort of picking a thesis topic, or if you're trying to decide on a topic for an essay or an assignment, if you can pick an arguable statement, that's always a good jumping off point. So is there something that sort of initiated a particularly heated discussion in class? Is there something your lecturer has mentioned as particularly contentious in the field? Is there something that you've come across in the literature that seems to be a hot topic of debate? Choosing a statement like that is always a good first step to building a good argument, because it's something that a lot of people will have had perspectives on and have written about, and thought about. And of course, that helps you then to build on the body of evidence. So another component of building a strong argument is making sure that you're making the case for something. You're not just saying, I think this is true because I feel A, B, and C. You're making a strong evidence-based case. You're going away and finding proof, essentially. Another, I think, element of a strong argument, I always say, is one that holds up to scrutiny. So if you're telling us, let's say you're writing an essay on homelessness in Ireland, and you want to talk about government policy and how government policy is a key component of that problem, or a driving factor of that problem. There will be counter arguments. There will be people who talk about things like personal responsibility, who talk about things like addiction, mental illness, those kinds of other factors in homelessness. And if you're just giving us your perspective and you're not addressing those counter arguments, or you're writing your essay without acknowledging them, it leaves your argument open to criticism. It makes your argument weaker because you haven't acknowledged or considered those other perspectives. Whereas if you refute them, if you bring them into your essay and say, yes, this person in 2021 said that addiction is a factor, address that and tell us why you don't agree with them. Tell us what they're saying and try to refute it as strongly as you can. That's a strong argument,
So it's not just about agreeing with everything you read. It's about presenting multiple perspectives. And that sounds really good.
And reading critically as well. I think what you just said really speaks to that when you're reading a piece of work for your essays or assignments, even if it's peer reviewed, even if it's something very important, you don't have to be afraid to really critically engage with it and say, actually, they've neglected to consider this, or this other person has written something I think is more compelling or more evidence-based.
Do you think that that's kind of like, for a student, that might be kind of a bit kind of scary to kind of nearly take the expert and nearly kind of critique them, and maybe you feel as if you nearly have to be bowing to it because they said it, therefore they should know, and I'm a first year and what would I know? So
I think it absolutely is. It's very intimidating, especially when you're starting out to do that. I think part of your college career and the progress that you make at college is building that critical confidence and knowing, actually, I've read and written quite a lot about this now, or I've done a lot of research on this, and I feel confident that I can say there are limitations to this theory, or actually this is quite outdated, or whatever it might be. And that can be scary to do that, but I think when your critical voice comes through, then when you find it, and when you're able to trust yourself to do that, it makes your writing a lot stronger. And obviously
it's really empowering, isn't it? Because you kind of now feel like I have a position on this, and I can defend my position and justify my position, and I'm comfortable if it's not the same position as you, but we're each good in our own space.
Exactly. So you don't have to necessarily take at face value something someone is saying just because it's peer reviewed, or they've been doing this longer than you have, or whatever it might be. You're able to sort of make your own case and take your own position. And that's a big part of it. And obviously it's evidence-based as well. So you'll feel confident because it's an informed position that you're taking from research and reading that you've done.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, great advice. I think hopefully we've given a lot of advice to people there and suggestions and strategies. And is there any final thing that you want to kind of give kind of your own kind of take on it, or something that you think might help?
I think it's always good to consider your own writing process. We all work differently. We all have our own processes. So find what works for you. Like some people are free writers. Some people are will plan every section of the essay down to the bullet point or whatever. For some people, it can be a slightly more organic process, and I'd say it's okay as long as you're doing a certain amount of planning and research in advance. It's okay if that's your process. The other thing, I guess, is just to go back to what we said about the critical voice. Not to be afraid to move beyond just description and telling the reader or the lecturer, this person did A, B, and C, and this person said A, B, and C about that. And that contextual detail can be really, really good. But don't be afraid to move beyond that, to sort of really engage with those ideas and say, actually, I've considered this, and this is my perspective on it. Because when you write any piece of academic work, even if it's an essay and you don't think it's significant in the larger scheme of things, you are becoming part of that conversation, that scholarly conversation. And even if you don't plan to publish something or whatever, you know, your essay is part of that body of work, and you should be proud of that, and to know that you're adding something to that conversation. I think that will help to sort of build the confidence.
Thank you very much for that conversation, Eva. I've learned loads, and it's been lovely chatting to you.
Gina.
And thanks to everyone. I'm just going to stop our recording there.